All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And this is going to be a really awesome episode. and Charles, today I have with me Charles Byrd. Charles, welcome. I'm like totally stoked to have you on the podcast with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And, I'll just start off right off Charles, you and I have such similar backgrounds. And I know when I was in running the previous company, I ran the publishing company over a 12-year period. I did almost 600 JVs, strategic partnerships and stuff. And you too have a background of doing hundreds of joint ventures. And yet, as we have similar backgrounds, our paths that they took us down have been dramatically different, which is way cool, which is really cool. And I'm looking forward to giving you the opportunity to share some of your path and what's been going on in your world. And I want to start off by you and I were talking before we hit the record button here. We found out that there was two guys who kind of connected us. I know one of them was Tom Poland, and this would have been all the way back in 2016. So we're talking like 7 years ago. I found an email from Tom connecting you and I, and then you also found an email from Robert Michon that introduced us. So we kind of had two guys that connected us. And I know I knew Tom because I was in this guy's Dove Gordon's group. He had this online group, and I was part of that for a while. And that's where I met Tom. And actually, come to think of it, I think I met Robert there too. And Robert attended the very first in-person event that I hosted here at my home back in August of 2017. Actually, right on the other side of this wall, it was the very first. I had 15 entrepreneurs fly in from around the country. And I'm not going to lie, Charles, that was my first experience in taking what I'd learned in doing all these joint ventures and all these strategic partnerships. And really, like my vision was I wanted to start facilitating relationships among these entrepreneurs and stuff. And because I thought if you get the right entrepreneurs in the right space for the right reasons, I just knew magic would happen. I couldn't articulate it, but I had enough relationship capital with the right people that I did two events back to back, one in August of that year, one in September. And 15 entrepreneurs flew into my home for each one of those two events. And I'm not going to lie, Charles, the first day of those events, I was like, man, look who's sitting in my living room. And I'm like, because these were entrepreneurs that I had known for years that were doing some big things. And on one hand, I was like, wow, look who you got to show up. And on the other hand, I'm like, please let this be valuable for them.
Sure.
And it turned out that it was. And in fact, Robert Michon, at the last day of that event, I was kind of like, I don't know, I wouldn't call it bemoaning, but I was just noticing how, over the course of that 2.5 days, some amazing conversations were had. And I thought that I would be able to contribute more to those conversations. But because of the caliber of entrepreneur who was there and the experience that many of them had, it was beyond anything that I had, personal experience with and that I could contribute on. And so I was just kind of talking, I thought I'd be able to contribute more than I actually did. And Robert's like, Kevin, stop. He's like, if it weren't for you having the foresight to open your home to us, to invite us, none of this would have even happened without you. He's like, you were the one who contributed the most. And, I heard him, Charles, but I still, I've come a lot further in the last, 7 years and stuff. And I've a lot more water under the bridge, a lot more experience. I've come to really understand a lot more the value that I bring to the table. And I'm not going to lie, I look at you and your Facebook posts and some of the stuff you're up to, and I'm like, man, Charles is doing some awesome stuff too. And so with that, I just want to turn it over to you and let you share from your heart to just kind of share what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you get to do in this world, and also give us some of your backstory as well, because I want people to really get an idea of who Charles is and what Charles is all about.
Perfect. Sounds good, Kevin. So yeah, it's been a while since we connected back in 2016. So uh, I help businesses scale with joint venture partnerships. And for a little backstory, straight into what I do today and who I serve. I worked in the Silicon Valley for 15 years, was a director at a billion-dollar software company, left to get a taste of the entrepreneurial freedom I read about in books, started with a low-ticket productivity course, which is around the time you and I met. And being new to the online space, I didn't yet have a list or connection. So started going to a lot of events and connecting with people online, and quickly found my new peer group of entrepreneurs already had my ideal clients in their communities. So started setting up presentations to other people's audiences, delivering a high value training and offering the deeper dive course, and started growing the list quickly, making sales, making a positive impact. So I thought, since this is working, what if I take my IT and systems background and simplify and systematize the entire joint venture process, which I did. And eventually people wondered how I book 2 to 6 joint venture promotions per week for my offers to other people's communities. And I was at a mastermind in Aspen, and my phone's blowing up with texts and messenger messages and people knocking on the room door going, how do you line up so many of these deals? So I decided to put together my first high ticket event called Pure JV.
Hmm?
And that's to help folks scale through partnerships. And that's the market I've been serving ever since. And at this point, it's through a one-on-one consulting type of offer. And what folks are walked through, same as in the events, helping them create a unique joint venture strategy for their product and market, help them identify their most profitable partners, show them how to connect to those partners through warm channels. My favorite part, how to guide the conversations to land the deals, frequently on the first call. Operationally, how to execute those deals, along with turning each one into 2 or 3 more. 8 of my clients in the first year added 1.25 to 6 million in additional revenue. I had
Wow.
3 clients on stage with Tony Robbins last month, teaching them how to create embedded partnerships so their offers are inside of Tony's. One of my clients, Todd Hartley, was messaging me the other day from the stage with 14,000 people on Tony's stage there. Um, one of my clients, Dr. Dan Pompa, his PR company just got him booked on Joe Rogan. So I'm showing him how to parlay that into warm intros to Lex Friedman and Andrew Huberman. And I'm working with my client, Dr. Robert Cialdini, to help him scale the Cialdini Institute. So we have some very large JVs in the works
Yeah.
to help really grow that brand. So in short, it's a framework to systematically get in front of other people's audiences, referrals, speaking, stages, and really take a network and grow it systematically by providing value first to the people around you. So I know you've had, like you were pointing out, a similar journey, and you're very conscious about relationship building and providing value. And it makes doing this not only inspirational because you're doing it out of service to others, but it's creating more opportunity for everyone involved, including yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. And of course, that's what this podcast is all about, is relationships. And I have long believed, as I'm sure you do too, Charles, that as entrepreneurs, relationships are our most valuable asset. Everything else stems from that. And when we get the
100%.
relationship piece right, I mean, I just listened to you going, man, Charles, this is like really good. It makes me want to go buy your stuff. And like we've known each other for years, and I'm like, man, this is really good stuff. And like, what a testament again to the power of relationships. And so, okay, So now I'm going to switch gears just a little bit,
Sure.
and I'm gonna reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners and stuff. So, Charles, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Charles, I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, so I'll kind of weave it in as a two-part thing, and
Okay.
I'll point out in both cases, I took the initiative to make something happen. And so number one, so this will be kind of a fun story. One morning, I woke up at Burning Man, as I tend to do every year, and decided to go meet Eben Pagan, who had been in similar orbits and circles as me for a long time. One of my team members who's been with me 8 years worked for him for 8 or more years. In any case, I tracked him down out of 75,000 people. Um, and and when we met, a storm was coming in. So we talked for like 10 minutes. He's like, here's my email. Let's set up a 15-minute call. Jumped on the call. It went almost an hour. And he's like, we need another call, except we'll have my whole team on there. And I was teeing up some big intros for a launch he had going.
Okay.
Um, then he invites me to an in-person mastermind in Southern Cal, and spent 5 days with him and Annie. And then he invites me to, right when I get home, I get invited to a Zoom call on a Saturday. And this is right at the beginning of the pandemic. I almost don't go because I've just spent 5 days, but I decide to show up, and it's the who's who of the internet marketing world, like 75 people deep. Jay Abraham, Jeff Walker, Stu McLaren, Marie Forleo, this completely incredible group of people. And we ended up meeting every week and then every month for over 3 years. And one of the people I messaged in that group was a gentleman named Bill Barron. And I just messaged him. I'm like, I know you're a business partner. I'd love to get to know you. He's like, great. So we jump on a call, and it quickly turns into like a kind of a coaching vibe. And I'm like, Bill, I didn't ping you to get free coaching. I just wanted to get to know you. And he's like, you know what? I just exited my company. I have nothing going on. Why don't you come to my house and we'll whiteboard out your whole next year? And so at the time he lived in the Bay, went to his house, planned out the whole next year. And like 3 days later, the phone rings. He's like, I've done 33 million in joint ventures. I've blown up my business with it. Would you like to partner, and we'll work together to blow up Pure JV? And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do that. So that was 3 years ago. And yeah, Bill has been just a wonderful person to have in my world and orbit to really help focus and scale and tighten up the offer. And I had the network and all the system side of it. So combined with a better strategy and a better offer, and everything's dramatically grown from there, along with the clientele and the results for them too.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So taking the personal initiative to locate and find Eben in Burning Man, which is, that's a pretty big place geographically. There's a lot of people there. So
No
there was a little
kidding.
bit of resourcefulness there, but you got to meet him in that environment and start a conversation, start a relationship. That one relationship has then like just led to so much more. And
Yeah, that's how I became friends with John Assaraf and Mike Koenigs and all these people I'd been in other groups with before but hadn't connected with.
yeah,
And in that kind of container of a peer group, um, and meeting every week, like then you build great relationships with all those members,
yeah,
and then having a systematic approach for connecting, following up, providing value, and guiding those into winning outcomes for everyone involved, it just balloons and amplifies. And I find there's really no limits to that. Like a new client I brought on last week runs $100 million company and values relationships every bit as much as you and I do. Even that a gentleman named Steve Harwood, who has a company called Prime, they do 100 million a year, all through joint venture partnerships,
Wow.
um,
Wow.
which is wild. And just to show you, like, you and I are relationship people, as are a lot of the listeners you have. Um, and my 13-year-old made a comment that I wasn't old because I can still ride a half pipe on my skateboard because I take him to the skate park. I made this comment to Steve, and the next week, a Pure JV branded skateboard shows up at my house. Like, he's running $100 million company. He takes the time to send me Pure JV branded skateboards simply because of a comment like that. So people that are listening and present and in it for other people, uh, that's like an amazing telltale sign of who you're dealing with when you
Yeah,
have someone who's that thoughtful.
absolutely. So if you look, I know, we've kind of focused, I mean, there's so many people that you could talk about it, but, kind of in this conversation, we focused the conversation around Eben and Bill and the impact that they've had on your life, on your business. And so if you look back over the years, and I know that you'll be able to come up with lots of examples for this question that I'm going to ask you. I'm going to challenge you to just come up with one. It'll be the first one that just immediately pops to mind for you. So if you look at your relationship with Eben and Bill and look back over the years, and look at where you were able to make a really big impact, where you were in a situation where you were able to make what you felt was a really large, substantial impact. And you also know that that would have never happened if not for your relationship with Eben or with Bill, either one of those two guys. What is an example of that, Charles?
Well, just to kind of highlight a client, a gentleman named Jackson Milan. He came to me when he was at 1.8 million. A year later, he was over 6 million
Okay.
through partnerships. He has an 11K offer helping businesses manage their money better and retain more personal wealth. And he was running Facebook ads that weren't working particularly well, and they started working a lot worse when Facebook shut down his ad account. Um,
Yeah,
and
right.
that's when he was referred over to me, and he's a quick start. So he hired me immediately, did everything I told him. He lined up 70 joint ventures in the first 2 months. I taught
Wow.
him how to create embedded partnerships. Um, that's where, as other people make sales of their product, you're making a sale of your product or getting a lead. Um, and it enabled him to more than triple the business, all the while touring Australia with his wife and two dogs in a 4x4 camper van before buying a farm with a bunch of kooky animals, and having entrepreneurs come reconnect with nature. He sent a
Wow.
referral 2 weeks ago that it was in Facebook Messenger, and he said, Charles has made me more money than any person on planet Earth. Um, Now, I still attribute this to, you know, Bill and, Eben as well, by way of the fact that really honing in and developing a very strong front end system for guiding people into my high ticket offer and then getting them amazing results. Although I was already doing that before I met either one of those folks, really dialing it in and making a very strong, repeatable process, and then a whole strong sales framework and so forth that Bill has certainly helped me with, made that sale very easy to Jackson. And then by having it so laid out and step by step, and him being an implementer, I mean, uh, 1.8 million to 6 million in a year. It's more than tripling the business. So
Yeah, that's huge.
that means he's able to reach so many more people to help them get their finances in a row and watch out for their future and make sure their kids are taken care of, which it means I'm amplifying the positive impact he's having in the world. And
Yeah,
that's how I feel about every client I work with. It feels great to get them different financial results, which consistently happens, but what's more fun to watch is the ripple effect of the impact and the ripple
absolutely.
effect of teaching people how to create better relationships and do
Yeah,
that systematically.
yeah, yeah. And you're right. When we serve the right people, the impact of what we do is so substantial. It's massive. I mean, like the ripple effect is so big. We will never truly know the real ripple effect because of who we serve and who they serve. I mean, there's so many of these entrepreneurs that have a very large reach, and so when we serve them, not only do they benefit, but their team, their staff benefits, their vendors benefit, their clients, all the people that their companies serve benefit. And so, the real impact is massive, and like that's why I love asking that question for the very reason that you just articulated so well. And so, you know, Charles, for anybody listening into this going, man, Kev, I can see why you were so excited to interview Charles for the podcast. I mean, I just love Charles. I love the way he shows up. What are some more resources or website way how they can find out more about what you're doing and do that? What's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, sure. Thank you for asking. They can pop over to charlesbyrd.com, Byrd. It's got info about what me and my team are up to, and there's a link to book a conversation if you'd like to do that. And so, yeah, anyone listening, feel free to pop over to charlesbyrd.com and hear basically take take what Kevin and I are talking about in relation to building relationships that lead to winning outcomes for everyone involved. It's it's being in service of others,
Yeah,
amplifying
yeah,
what they're doing while building long-term, high-quality relationships. It's as Kevin will attest, a very satisfying way to live because it's really being there for people, and they absolutely show up for you too.
yeah. 100%, 100%. And well, Charles, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Yeah, for one, if you're someone who kind of feels like relationships are important, but you're super busy and you've got a lot going on, and you're like, how do I fit in the time for this? I'll loop back to something Robert Michon inadvertently taught me when he and I were hanging out at an event many years ago. We spent like 3 hours together, and when we were winding down, he's like, "Hey, if I ever come to mind, just ping me." And I remember thinking, that's weird. What if you are at dinner with your kids or you're delivering a presentation and then I was like, I'm actually going to do that with everybody. If someone comes to mind, ping them because they came to mind for a reason. Maybe you talked to one of their friends. Maybe you're going to be in their city. Maybe you got some new camera or toy that they would appreciate. That's the only reason you need to reach out. And or maybe you have a referral or great connection for them. So by checking in with people over time, this is building and growing a relationship over time, not just hitting them up when you need something. This is digging the well before you're thirsty. And just as an example, one of my clients, Kane Minkus, who I helped get on Tony Robbins' stage, and he'll be on again in January. Um, I know he's into tech and cameras and things, so I'm like, send him a video. I'm like, I got this new camera. I'm super excited. Wanted to share it with you. Then he replies back, nice camera. Hey, do you want to speak to my high level group and do a JV with Roland Frazier? And John Assaraf and this whole list. He's like, love to feature you as one of our core contributors because I helped him make over 4.5 million in the last year and a half. Um, so point being, I pinged him about a camera. Then he invites me to be a featured guest in a huge JV that he put together. So when you're top of mind, when you're connecting, when you're providing value, uh, cool things happen. So thanks, Robert, for saying ping me when I come to mind because I teach that almost every day, and I do it absolutely every day.
Yeah, that is that's some solid advice right there. You know, I know I do that too. Like I meditate most mornings, and after I do that, my next thing is just like, who am I going to reach out to today to just show some appreciation to? And I've been doing that for 11 years now. I've been doing that, and it's exactly what you said, Charles. It has led to so many amazing things, and so well, Charles, once again, thank you so much for taking time to have this conversation. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you. And I'm excited to get this out there and share this with a bunch of other entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Kevin. It's been a lot of fun.
You bet.